And I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever.
If you've been watching the news, you know about the uproar over President Donald Trump's recent executive order to, quote, no longer require the explicit exclusion of segregated facilities in new government contracts, according to a February memo from the U.S. General Services Administration. And if you've been spending any time on social media, you've seen the jokes and the think pieces about segregation coming back. Some people are worried that we might see a return to the Jim Crow era. But is this true? No, not exactly. But before we get into all of that, you know I like to lay a proper foundation. So here's a quick backstory. Once upon a time, after the Civil War and the abolition of slavery and the 13th Amendment, the U.S. said, you know what? We really can keep this slavery thing going. Now, how we gonna do that, Jim? Well, Bob, remember those slave codes? We can restrict the freedom of African Americans and maintain our system of slavery by drawing on our existing slave codes. Wow, what a genius idea. But Jim, how we gonna do that, boss? We'll just call them black codes. So long story short, the slave codes became the black codes, which laid the foundation for Jim Crow laws from, as we've talked about in previous videos, the name of the minstrel show, Jump Jim Crow, performed in the 1820s by this white dude who someone decided will also be the new name of the discriminatory and segregation practices. Long story short, states passed laws that strictly limited where black people were allowed to work and live. Jim Crow laws prohibited black people from using white schools, residential areas, public parks, theaters, restaurants, cemeteries, pools, bathrooms. It's also important to know that segregation was not just blacks and whites living separately. Segregation was also sanctioned violence. It was not only that you are not allowed in these places, but you can also be fined, jailed, beaten, or lynched for violating these laws. It was codified on local and state levels, meaning to put the laws into an organized system, most famously with the separate but equal decision of the U.S. Supreme Court in Plessy versus Ferguson. Now, fast forward to 1954, when the Supreme Court revised Plessy and Brown versus Board of Education, declaring segregation in public schools unconstitutional, and by extension, that ruling was applied to other public facilities. Fast forward to 1965, when Executive Order 11246 is signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson to, quote, prohibit discrimination in employment because of race, creed, color, or national origin, end quote. This is according to the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Fast forward to the present day, 2025, where President Donald Trump repeals the order signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson in 1965 on contractors and non-discrimination, which is why people are thinking that we are now going back to separate signage like you've seen in the not so long ago 50s and 60s. But is this true? Now, my personal opinion is that they can do whatever they want to do. I don't put nothing past these people. But technically, no, it is not true. Trump did not legalize segregation. The U.S. Constitution, particularly the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, prohibits racial segregation. All businesses, including those that have government contracts and those that do not, still need to follow federal and state laws, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which makes segregated facilities illegal. The memo states that contractors are still subject to laws on civil rights and non-discrimination, and segregation remains illegal under U.S. law.